Okay, I'm uploading this on YouTube. فأحسن لكم معكم كل شيء.
Hello everyone, editing Sina here. As you saw from the last clip, the audio is really bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my voice, like a voiceover, over the video or over the slides, or I could just switch back to this and we'll figure it out. You already know these things. I'm just going to summarize everything we took from the last session, since you had a really big break for the externals, so hope you did well in that. So the first thing I mentioned when I saw you guys was that if you knew the difference between the IB curriculum and the IG curriculum. So IB students write a lot, IG students do not write a lot. So that's actually a big problem because writing is a very, 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 very important skill. So is research. So the IPQ is very important. So even if you're not going to take it as an external next year, there hopefully will be a lot of things that you can learn this year.
Okay, هذا علمي is a topic. علمي بحسب is a topic history بحسب حسب the topic that you decide.
The IPQ is a school subject. It will be included in your school certificate for this year, and you won't have any exams. It will all be submission based. So I will just ask you to write a report, for example. Yeah, so if you choose to do it as an external, it will be equivalent to half an A level, as I mentioned before. If it is a scientific topic, then it can be equivalent to a scientific AS for the equivalency in Jordan.
Good question. If it's scientific, if the topic is going to be about science, then it's considered scientific. If you're going to talk about history, then it's not going to be scientific. It depends on the topic you choose.
The 30 hours taught bit and the 90 hours individual work, we will discuss this later on in more detail, but basically you're going to be spending 30 hours of taught material this year with me, which is basically 1 hour every week for around 30 weeks approximately. And then if you do choose to do it as an external, you have to work on your project 90 hours total. Okay, what is basically the IPQ? It is, you'll be submitting 3 things: the production log. This is where you show everything that you've been doing so that we can see how you reached your final product, which is the report. In uni, you will be asked to write a report as well, but that will be like 15,000 words. For this one, it will be around 5,000 words, where you're basically going to pick a topic of your own interest and write about it, basically. But there's a bit of some rules regarding that, and we'll get to it next session. So in addition to these 2 documents, you have to submit proof of presentation because you need to do a presentation if you're going to do it as an external next year after you submit your reports. You're going to have to talk a bit about your report and your process and everything. More on that later on, don't worry. So this slide, I'm going to be showing you a lot. It's basically just to tell you what are you assessed on. There are certain objectives that we're going to look at in the report and the production log to see if you tick these items or not. So if you need more information about the IPQ, you need to know how to access the website. There's so much information on there that could help you. Okay, so what you need to be able to do is go on Google, open the IPQ website. All you have to do is type in IPQ Oxford, click on the first link. Everything you need to know is on this website. So you need to read the specifications, which I asked you guys to go through. I can go through it right now with you. This is very important for students who are going to go to American or UK universities. Here, this is a university from Texas talking about how important IPQ is. Then you have a university from the UK, University of Southampton, also talking about the IPQ. So I recommend, please do this as a homework for next time when you actually come back to school, when we are actually going to start working on it. So I don't need any questions of like, okay, what are we going to be assessed on, blah, blah, blah. Please try to go through the website, just skim through it, read like how does it work, why choose it. So you don't really need to read about the teacher's part. Fair assessment. Here the timeline, I already went through this with you guys in class, but what is the process like? So you discussed a project idea. This is what we're going to do next session. Then you're going to do, this is later on. The step between these 2 is actually a very big step. Then you independently develop your project. This is what the A2 students are currently doing. So basically you submit the proposal at the end of this year, like June, next June. And then you submit your 5,000 word report in February 2022. So while you're in the A2. So you have up until then to decide whether or not you are going to take the external. So you can drop out at any moment. So that's why I recommend that you go for it if you feel like it might be very useful to you. Now, in this part of the website, it discusses differences to the EPQ. EPQ is what the UK students have.
So as I mentioned to you guys before, when I went to uni in the UK, we were asked to write a dissertation in my final year, and all of my UK friends knew what they were doing. I actually kind of felt a bit lost. It took me a while to get the hang of it, but even after I submitted my dissertation, it wasn't what it was supposed to be. I actually have it right here. This is my first dissertation. It looks quite big, but it's actually like single-paged, and the spacing is quite large. I don't know if you can tell. But I did a lot of mistakes, and I will share that with you later on. But then I did another dissertation for my master's degree, and this was actually a lot better.
You can just keep scrolling down. You can go through these if you like. Again, as I mentioned, there's a production log. There's an example of an empty production log that you can look into. Here, you can click here and get access to the textbook for 1 month only. So I don't recommend that you click on it just yet. I'm going to kind of summarize everything that's in the book anyway. And then if you feel like you need to later on access it, then you can access it and take notes and stuff. And because you're only going to be able to access it for 1 month. And then if you think that it's very useful to you, then you can try to purchase it from Rosary Sister School, right? So you can contact Ms. Zena or the Idara to get a copy for yourself. Here you have the marked exemplars. Basically, they are kind of like a mark scheme, but it's like kind of like a guide for you to try to understand how you're supposed to fill in certain parts of the production log, to see the report and the quality of the report, and to see comments. So that's the most important part, is that their past supervisors have provided comments on what they've done. Now, one mistake that some students did last year was that they copied everything that the exemplar, A-star exemplar did, which is actually very wrong, because the exemplar did not do certain things perfectly either. It's not like a mark scheme. It's not. It's just a student who got an A-star. You could get an A-star with many mistakes. That's okay. But my concern is if you copy the exemplar and then you do his mistakes, and in addition you also do your own mistakes, then it might get a bit messy. So if I click on maybe the guy who got an A-star, so I recommend actually that you open, whenever you open something, this just scrolls down. So I recommend that you actually go and look at the ones who didn't do as well and see the comments, because the comments are going to be very useful. If you scroll down, here is the taught skills element. I'm going to be using this. I'm going to be using these 3 sources. So I'm going to print some stuff with you, and I'm going to go through these with you. But I do recommend that you go through them eventually. Like, this is just like a notice, right? Let me just like do this splash thing. This is a notice. Okay. Was it this color? Oh, I don't know. Is that you can use these sources that I just mentioned when you're revising later on. I'll discuss them. I'll tell you, guys, it's from this taught skills element, from the exemplars, that page. There's like a bit of sources that you can use. Please click on that. The Southampton has a thing, blah, blah, blah. I could say that later on. This is like a checklist to check later on, but you need to basically have everything on here done. Again, we'll go through that later on. And this is the grading system. You don't get like a 80%, 90%. You get an A star, A, B, or C, D, E, basically. So this is the first thing that we're going to be working on, is the record of initial ideas. We'll go through that, but then you have to basically submit a certain bit every couple of months. We'll go through that later on, don't worry about it. But if you keep scrolling down, this is the production log so far. That was his production log. Then you're going to start with the appendix. So this is just like a draft of the work that he's done while he was working on it. So during the production log and before submitting the report. So you have to do this much research and work before you get to a good report, basically. You need to do all of this drafting. We'll go through that later on. But this is just to show you. All of that is just drafts, an appendix to the production log. So any extra work that you do, you can just attach it to the production log, basically. And then, so here is his report, his actual report. So 1 page, 2 pages, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages. And then you have the bibliography. We'll also discuss that later on. we'll do that later on. So basically you can choose to read it. This is his presentation as well, because you also have to prepare a presentation. I know that this can seem very overwhelming, but you can't really tell if you can. So we'll go through it step by step so that it's not as overwhelming. So just to let you know that this sort of resource can be very helpful to you, and it's available for you. So again, I asked you to also go through the specifications. You can go through the contents page. I also am going to tell you more about skim reading, but basically when I tell you to read a document or an article, you don't have to read everything word for word. One thing you can do is go to the contents page and see if anything is useful to you, or you can just start scrolling down. So introduction, okay, why choose it? If you feel like you still need some convincing on why you should choose the IPQ, then maybe you should read these 3 paragraphs. What is it? If you still you're not sure, then you can read more information. It's basically you choose an area of interest, you have a title, aims and objectives. It's like basically like a report for English, but it's a bit more, there's a bit more elements to it. We'll go through that later on, don't worry. Then you have to do some planning, researching and carrying out the project, and then you write the report. Then you deliver a presentation, then you provide evidence. This is all going to be discussed stage by stage later on. What are the learning outcomes? So what would you actually learn from this? These are skills that would be very helpful for you at uni and later on at work. Very, very, very useful information, from my opinion. Very useful skills and knowledge that you will acquire when you do the IPQ. I hope that my mic isn't hitting my hair and so the voice is actually clear. Imagine I have to redo this again. Oh my God. Recognition, teaching resources. Okay. Don't really have to teaching because you're not doing the teaching. But you can go through it anyway. The center coordinator will be Ms. Zena. Then you can also ask a specialist consultant. So depending on your topic, if you're going to do something about in biology or something, then you can ask a specialist, or a biology teacher, or someone you can interview to get more information if you need it. These are the assessment objectives. I do recommend that you just go through them roughly, maybe after we take the first session, but I do recommend that you just go through them to know what they are and just keep coming back to them because they're very, very, very important. You can also, these are actually very important for later on. Once you get to an advanced stage, you might want to go through that again and read it again. Okay. And we're done. So for the next session, I asked you to do a quick homework. Basically, you need a copybook. So just get a tiny copybook. It doesn't matter how big it is. Just whatever copybook that you can write on. So the first homework is to write all your areas of interest. So whether they are music, a TV show, a certain subject, whatever interests you, sports, anything that you're interested in, just write it in that first page of your copybook. Is there a certain career that you're aiming for? Anything that you know now that is interesting for you. Just write it all down. A certain artist, a certain musician, doesn't matter. Just write it down. Now, just be careful that if a controversial topic is chosen, then you have to make sure that there are no risks. Well, I told you about these controversial topics in class. I don't need to talk about them on YouTube, so.
Okay, now the topic that you choose should not be covered in your A-levels. So in the beginning of the introduction, you write down the topics that you're taking in A-level. If I'm going to bio, physics, math, if you're going to talk about something that's really extensively covered in biology, يعني شيء معين already محكين كل شيء عنه you can't cover it. It should be something outside the scope of your A-levels. شيء زيادة جديد.
Again, what are the benefits? So students who take the qualification are 29% more likely to achieve a grade A star to B in most of their A-level subjects. So this is a statistic that the Oxford people did, and apparently it actually improves you because you start to think differently. You'll see that you'll start to look at things differently and your perspective will shift. You'll start to think of things critically. You have to make sure that the data that you're reading is reliable. All of that is very, 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 very important. So it helps you with your other topics and how you write as well. It also helps you with your application for university. One more important thing I wanted to mention was that it actually helps you with your personal statement and when you're actually applying for university. So not just how your application seems to the people concerned or your application, but it also gives you something to talk about in your application and your personal statement for your application for university. Now, you're not going to have an exam. You're not going to have exams for the IPQ throughout this year for school, and even external. It's just going to be a submission where you basically write your report, you fill in your production log, you put them together, you give them to me or your supervisor, whoever it may be at the time. Fatin is currently a supervisor as well. We go through it, we grade it, we send it to Oxford. They see our grading, they either accept it or they don't. So they could leave the grade as it is, or maybe they increase it or decrease it based on what you've done and the assessment objectives. For the school, you're just going to have homeworks. You're going to have a lot of submissions. So at the end of this year, you're going to have to write 1,000 words instead of 5,000. So even if you're not going to take the IPQ next year, you still have to write 5,000 words. Be careful of plagiarism. More about that later on. So another thing of how the IPQ helps you with your applications for uni, if you already know the career you want to take, so the degree you want to do, and which university, or roughly which university, you can go on Google, go to the university website that you're interested in. You can Google University of Southampton, you can find undergraduate, click on undergraduate. Then you can maybe look for whatever degree you are interested in. So I'm looking for civil engineering, doesn't really matter. And so you need to look at the entry requirements. So there you go. A-level with extended project qualification. If you are taking an IPQ in addition to 3 A-levels, you will receive the following offer in addition to the standard A-level offer. A-star EB, including grades A-star A in mathematics and an additional required subject in any order, plus grade A in the IPQ. So instead of having an A-star AA requirement, you will now have an A-star AB, considering that you have an A-star and A in mathematics and an A in the IPQ. That's just an example of how applications can go for you, and how the IPQ, they will actually take that into consideration with your grades, although you're actually more likely to score the A with the IPQ. So guys, one more thing I want to add is that don't feel discouraged that it's an extra external subject that you need to do don't be discouraged that this is an extra external subject that you need to do in addition to your 3 or 4 A-levels. So what I want to say is that obviously there are benefits, because you do start to think differently and you start to write differently, and it affects the rest of your A-levels. But other than that is that what I need to clarify very clearly is that it's all about time management. Honest to God, it's all about time. If you manage your time properly, you can do a lot more than you think. So I think what most of us, or most of you at this age, lack is time management. So you need to take time off your social media. You need to be able to organize your time and see which subjects you need to give time for and when. And I know that it can be a very stressful time, but the point is you can do it. I personally know people who took 5 to 6 A-levels and they succeeded in all of them. So there's no excuse. You can do it. You're able to do it. So just think about it. And as I said, you have up until February to decide that you don't longer want to do it. Because at the end of the day, I hope that you at least get the benefits that you could get from this year, even if you don't take it as an external next year. So just bear that in mind. And yeah, it's all about time management. I want to end this session with that statement.
Okay, the topic that you pick should not be covered in your current A-level subjects. So in psychology, you're taking a certain topic, مثلا certain illness, whatever. إذا موجود كل التفاصيل فيه, you can't use that certain topic. لا, ما هو بدك تكتبي بالبرودكشن لوج ايش المواد اللي هتاخديها. فthey should know. مثلا أخذتوا biology بس أخذتوا عن شيء معين, sickness, illness معين, you can't talk about it. It's okay, I can edit. Don't worry. أبغى أروح على أشياء تساعدنا على في ناس حتى بآخر الAF. شو بتقعدنا؟
بطل بدك تروح تنزلي على الفار.
بخلي بلوبر
يا
حرام روح يا باش.
What was I saying?
blueprint ترى
What was I saying? شو بدي أحكي؟ هلا شو بدي أحكي؟ ربنا ينسى عن Okay, listen. Samir, I don't want to spend the session of me saying listen. Okay. هلا. Keep forgetting that. شو كنت أحكي؟ I can. What was I saying?
ليه واحد يكتب لي اياها؟
وانا مفكر سمير
طب مثله خليت واحد يكتب لي اياها كيف جاهز؟
يا جماعه
خلص خلص بدي اقعد خلص سيشن
والله ما اشتكي
لا صراحه